Do you need a power bank in your van, or can you do without one? Stay tuned to find out. Now then everyone, I hope you're all well. As regular viewers of the channel will know, I have a few Ecoflow units in my van that were given to me to create a sponsored video a few years ago. And although the information I gave you was correct and true, as that's the ethos of the channel, I thought that after a few years of using the power banks it would be a good time for a chat about them. I've been using 2 of these constantly in the van alongside other smaller power banks, and I wanted to give you a non-sponsored view of them and why you may or may not need a power bank in your van. Regular viewers of the channel will know that I've not done a sit in the van video and chat at camera for a while, so here it is. I'll try and put some B-roll over my face so you don't have to keep looking at me throughout the video. I'll try and find some bits, even if they're not relevant to what I'm talking about, so you don't have to keep looking at my face. Not only that, hay fever is at DEFCON 4 at the moment. I know, ridiculous. I go all winter without getting a cold or a flu or anything like that, and then summer comes and I'm like, hey, welcome to what it feels like to have a cold. Stupid. And for those of you that have clicked on the video because you're doing your research about power banks, this is probably the final one that you need to watch before going to bed. So just go to bed after this one. This one's less technical than some of the others, and you might learn a thing or two, because it's kind of a real world thing, whatever. So the first power bank I'm going to talk about is my Ecoflow Delta 2. Now there are other larger capacity power banks out there like Jackery and or Bluetti, but this one's my one, so I can only talk about this one. Hashtag not sponsored. Now you're probably wondering why I've got a kettle on top of it, and that is because I can actually boil a kettle with this 4 or 5 times, this particular kettle. I'll put a link in the description below. It's low wattage, and you probably see them in B&Bs and things like that. But yeah, it's 1000 watts and it absolutely runs perfectly fine on this, and I use it all the time when I'm off grid. It's great for just smashing the kettle on, getting a pot noodle on the go, and or all your papers floating away. It's brilliant. With this particular power bank, it stays in the cupboard all of the time. I've got a little extender lead, so it means that I don't have to go to the back of it to plug in the 230 volt appliances and things like that, and it means that I've always got 230 volts off-grid wherever I am, which is brilliant. I can use my induction hob on this off-grid, but do bear in mind if you get another brand that they might not be able to accommodate the 2 kilowatts of an induction hob, because I found out recently that it pulses at 2000 watts. Even if it says it's a low watt one and it says 400, it's not actually 400 watts. What it is doing is pulsing at 2000 watts at a time. So if your power bank is tripping out, then that's the reason for it. Even though it is a low watt induction hob like mine is, it still powers 2000, which is stupid. Another great reason for having a larger capacity power bank doesn't always centre around having it in the van. Last year we had power cuts and I think we lost power for a few hours. I still had my TV, my internet, lights. I was the envy of the street, and that came in really, really handy. I just came out to the van, took it out, plugged it all into everything I had, and off I were going. And I carried on my evening until the power came back on, which I thought was brilliant. Michelle takes this down to the allotment to use the grass cutter. She's the envy of everybody around there because they're all using their hand ones, and it's taking forever, and she just basically just powers up the grass cutter and off she goes. It takes her 5-10 minutes to cut the grass. So yeah, it's great not only in the van but also outside of the van, like DIY, just because it's a bit easier when you're in a location where instead of getting a massively long extension lead, you can just have this with you, and then you're not limited to where you can be, certainly in tight spaces or somewhere where there's no power around at all. Yeah, so I use that for DIY as well as in the van. So another great advantage to having a high capacity power bank like this is that you can run your whole van from it. I've seen people build vans, not have to have a leisure battery, not have to have an inverter or a split charger or anything like that built into their van. They basically power all of their lights and fridge from something like this. And I think that's a brilliant idea, because not only will it power your van, like I've said previously, you can take it out and use it somewhere else. With a leisure battery and a split charger and an inverter, they're always in your van, so you can't take them out. But whatever works for you, do what works best. But yeah, just an advantage there to having a larger capacity one. Another advantage to having a large capacity power bank like this is you can pretty much run any 230 volt appliance in your van or outside your van at any time. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people have asked me, can I run my heater from this, as in like a 2 kilowatt heater? It will plug in, it will run,
but you'll only get about 3 minutes of heating time. So don't buy it if you're wanting to use this to run an electric fan heater. That's not the purpose for it. You know, get a diesel heater or be on electric hookup and use your fan heater that way. This is 1024 watt hours. Now you can get larger capacity ones, but obviously then you're going to get a larger unit, which might be a little bit difficult if you're in a small van like I am. They're about £900 from the likes of B&Q or Currys or something similar.
£900 for 5 kettle boils? No thank you.
But if you search around on eBay and you've got a bit of time, you could probably pick one of these up for about 500 quid used. Now, some of the cons of having a larger capacity power bank like this are it does take up a lot of space in the van. We have it specifically in a cupboard that we've designed to have it in there because we knew we were going to keep it in here. But if you're going to be carrying it in and out all of the time, then yeah, it does take up a lot of space. Not only that, if you're relying on this as your power source and you get to the campsite and you've forgotten it, you're pretty much screwed. They're massively expensive if all you're using it for is to charge your phones and your iPads and small electronic appliances. Don't buy something like this if it's literally just to charge your phones and iPads. There are smaller ones that I'm going to show you a little bit later on in this video that will be way more ideal for that. And just before we get onto the final con of having a larger capacity power bank in your van, if you guys have got any pros or cons that I've not yet mentioned, pop it down in the comment section below because it'll help anybody who's watched this video go through and read them and give them a little bit more advice. So if, like me, you're using a lot of high power appliances like this 1000 watt kettle in your van on a larger capacity power bank, you're going to be charging it more often than not. So if you are not linking this up to your solar panels and you're taking it in a lot, you're going to have to charge them up quite frequently. Maybe 4 or 5 boils out of this and it needs fully charging again. So either link it to your solar panels. They're not solar panels, that's just the ceiling. Solar panels are above there on the roof. Link it to your solar panels, or be prepared to be taking it out of the van constantly to charge it up. So one last thing on the high capacity power bank, certainly the one that I've got in my van, the Delta 2, is that I can plug my battery charger that charges up the leisure battery. Normally when I'm electric hookup, I can plug that into my Delta 2, which keeps my leisure battery topped up as well if I'm off grid. Stops me having all that battery anxiety, which I'm sure we all have. But now it's kind of the opposite. When I look at my power stats, I'm like, it says 97%, it should be 100, and then I'm topping up to 100 all the time, so I'm kind of power hungry now. So moving on to the next power bank that I've got in the van. It doesn't always stay in the van, but it could potentially stay in your van if you are needing just a backup power source that doesn't take up a load of space. Now, you can't run a kettle on this, it would completely trip out. It's not really meant for that, although it does have an inverter and you can run some 230 volt appliances on there, but not all of them. Certainly not a 1000 watt travel kettle, that's for sure. This is great for keeping your tablets charged or your phones charged and things like that. This would easily last a week with the family charging their phones overnight. I have no problems in the past doing that myself, and not only that, I can have this up in the pop top when we're camping with the family. I usually sleep in the pop top and Olivia and Michelle usually sleep downstairs. It means that I've got a power source up there if we're off grid to keep my phones charged or my iPad charged or whatever it is I need to charge up overnight up there without having to use the leisure battery, for instance, which is running the fridge normally. It's a great source of power to have as a backup as well. You know, you could technically charge a little bit of your leisure battery with it if you were to plug it in. So yeah, just as an option, maybe you could do that. It is small enough to keep in the van all of the time. It doesn't take up a lot of space. You can have it in a cupboard, under the seats, or even in the front or whatever. Usually we have it in the front on my little seat shelf, charging up while we're driving, so it's fully charged when we get there. If not, then obviously we just charge it up in the house or via solar while we're camping. Speaking of its portability, I wouldn't suggest you put it in a rucksack and tuck it anywhere you were going on a massive hike, but we love paddleboarding. I love kayaking. I'm not very good at paddleboarding, and anybody who does that will also know that by the time you've pumped it up manually, one of those pumps, you're absolutely knackered before you've even set off. So we went out and bought a 12 volt pump. I'll put a link in the description below to that. Now, sometimes we can pump the paddleboards up outside the van, plug it into the 12 volt port in the van, and off you go. However, like when we went to Devon, what we wanted to do was carry the paddleboards down to the beach without them being all inflated, certainly in the wind getting blown around and stuff, and it was a bit of a walk there. So we took this with us, plugged it into the 12 volt port, and actually pumped our paddleboards up with the pump on the beach, which was great because then we deflated them and brought them back again. It just meant they'd be on our back, and it was just so much easier for us. You might like carrying your paddleboard, that's absolutely fine, but it just made it so much easier for us to have our rucksacks as well as the paddleboards not inflated, to carry them down to the beach and use this to keep them inflated. Probably talked about that too much, but yeah, that's a great idea and a great usage for this as well. So when it comes to the cons of something like this, I can't actually think of any cons at all. No matter what brand it is, could be a Jackery or a Bluetti or another similar branded one of a similar capacity, I can't think of any cons. Unless you're the type of person who likes to be off-grid without phones and tablets and stuff, that's absolutely fine, and you probably wouldn't need one of these. But if you're a family or a solo traveller that likes to keep their electronic devices charged up and don't want to take up a load of space in the van, then yeah, smaller capacity power bank like this would be perfect. If you're wanting something smaller and a bit more versatile, then the next one I've got coming up might be the thing for you. Now, hardcore fans of the channel will recognise this beauty from my 3rd or 4th ever video on YouTube. It was a really bad review of this Bordon Generator, so don't go watch it, it's bad. But this is something that I use in the van all the time. This was the first generator that I ever bought for the van because I wanted something that I could run 230 volt appliances on, charge up my phones and stuff off grid without using the leisure battery, and it's super small. I've even been known to put this in my rucksack, not on big hikes, nobody wants that, but put it in my rucksack to keep, I don't know, my batteries charged up for my drone. Again, you're not going to be able to run a kettle on this, no chance. I can't even run my blender in the house, and that's only 60 watts. It runs absolutely fine when there's nothing in the blender. Whenever I put something in the blender and it has to chovel something up, chovel's a word, it just goes beep and then it turns itself off. So yeah, 60 watts maximum, but great to get you out of a pinch if you need to plug something in that only works on a normal plug socket rather than USB. Now, I've seen these priced at the cheapest around 120 quid. Now, I think they're either refurbished or used, and I think brand new, they can be upwards of £200, which to me, I think you're paying for the convenience of the size because it is super small. This, you would not notice in your van at all. So I think you're paying for the convenience. For me personally, if I had a choice as to whether to buy this one or this one, I'd go for this one every time. It's larger capacity. It's about the same price, give or take 20 quid. And it's way more versatile. I can definitely run my blender on this, but not this. And one last thing before I go on this is that I do use it to keep my music system charged up when I'm outside of the van having a fire pit. Obviously I don't have it on loud or anything like that, but this does keep it fully charged, and sometimes you'll get to put your music on and it'll say battery too low, and it just really comes in handy to have that because it doesn't take up the space in the van. It literally goes in my top cupboard up here, out of the way, and yeah, keeps my music system charged, and all phones when I'm sat outside at the fire pit, which is always a good thing to have. There are alternatives that you can do other than getting a power bank in your van, like having a decent leisure battery, a split charger and an inverter, but do remember that, you know, if you're going to be using an inverter in your van, you've got to have enough power inside your actual leisure battery for it to run those appliances. If you're going to be running a 1000 watt kettle on a 90 amp hour battery in an inverter, it's not going to last very long. You probably get a few boils out of it before your battery's flat, and then that means you've got no lights, no fridge or anything like that. So that's why we have separate power banks to our leisure battery, because some people have asked that, why, if you've got a leisure battery, do you need a power bank? It just means that we can divert the power somewhere else, and once that's gone, it's gone, but we've still got, you know, the fridge is still on, the lights are still on, everything like that. And it just takes away that slight battery anxiety that I sometimes have. And just before we get onto the final power bank choice, which I think everybody should have at least one of these in their van or their bags at some point, if you've yet to like and subscribe, then please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us create more content and videos like this for you guys. Hopefully this has helped at least one person out there. If not, then whatever, sorry. Now, the final power bank I think that everybody should have in their van is one of these. Now, they're about 20 or 30 quid on Amazon. They always say that like 420 billion gazillion watt hours. They're not really. I've got a flip phone, which is a small capacity battery pretty much, and it charges from 0 to full about 5 times with this. And not only that, I'm always forgetting leads. I'm always forgetting the correct lead to plug into this to then go into the phone or whatever it is I'm charging. And the reason I went for this particular one is the leads are actually attached. Again, hashtag not sponsored. I'll put a link in the description below to this particular one. My mum and dad ended up getting one of these as well. Is that the leads are attached all of the time. There's a USB-C there. There's a standard USB-A, I think it's called, that I use that to charge it up with. And then there's an iPhone one as well there. I know it works because it works with my daughter's iPad and iPhone, which is great. Now, for a long time I had this and I didn't realise it actually had a USB mini or micro mini, I don't know, whatever. I think it's a micro. But it's actually the handle here, and it just pulls out and then there's a micro USB, which is a lot of appliances and a lot of stuff still uses this. I wish everyone used USB-C, it'd be so much easier, but they don't. But it means that I've got 4 wires attached to this in something that's no bigger than, you know, your standard battery bank, and it's really convenient. This is always fully charged and in the van, because when I go on walks and hikes and things like that, I use my phone as my map, and if that goes, then I'm lost. So having this on walks means that I can keep my phone charged. It means I've always got my map, I've always got an emergency phone call should I need it, and not only that, I can plug my batteries for my camera into this, so they're always charging on a recycle while I'm walking, so I don't run out of battery power at all, which is great. So that's about it for this video, a nice little short one for you. I will be going away next week to a campsite yet to be announced, and I'll be giving you a campsite tour on that one as well, and giving you hints and tips along the way, and answering your questions in the Colin answered your questions section. So enjoy that and look forward to that a little bit later. Take care, stay awesome, and I shall see you on the next adventure. See you, bye.